Jake Morrison stood in the landing bay of the Earth Embassy ship, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. He was 28 years old, fresh out of his doctorate program, and completely out of his depth. Around him, the other members of the human delegation checked their formal clothes and reviewed their notes on portable screens. They all looked so confident, so prepared. Jake was a wildlife biologist. He studied animals, specifically predators. He spent most of his time in the field, tracking bears in Alaska or observing wolves in Yellowstone. He wore hiking boots more often than dress shoes. He had never imagined he would be part of a diplomatic mission to an alien empire. But here he was, heading to meet the Velthrian Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Velthrians controlled over 300 star systems and had been traveling between the stars for thousands of years. Humans had only invented faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was the new kid on the block. Ambassador Lisa Chen walked over to Jake. She was in her 50s, calm and professional in her dark blue suit. She had negotiated treaties with 4 different alien species already. "Nervous?" she asked with a kind smile. Jake nodded. "A little. I still don't understand why I'm here. You have diplomats, scientists, engineers. What do you need a wildlife biologist for?" Lisa's smile grew wider. "The Velthrians specifically requested someone with your expertise. They're very proud of their wildlife management programs. They've colonized hundreds of worlds, many with dangerous native species. They want to share information about predator control and ecosystem management. But I'm the least experienced person on this team," Jake said. "Sometimes that's an advantage," Lisa replied. "Fresh eyes see things veterans miss. Just be yourself, Jake. That's all we need." The ship shuddered slightly as it docked with the Velthrian station. Jake took a deep breath. Through the viewport, he could see the alien structure, massive and beautiful, with sweeping curves that looked more organic than mechanical. Lights glowed in patterns that shifted like living things. The airlock opened with a hiss. A group of Velthrians waited on the other side. Jake had seen pictures, but pictures didn't do them justice. The Velthrians were tall, nearly 7 feet on average, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. They had large eyes, elegant features, and moved with a grace that reminded Jake of dancers. They wore flowing robes in rich colors, decorated with intricate patterns. At the front of the welcoming party stood a female Velthrian who was clearly someone important. She was slightly taller than the others, and her robes were deep purple with gold threading. She carried herself with absolute confidence. "Welcome to Kethros Station," she said in perfect English. The translation technology was so good that Jake could barely tell she wasn't human. "I am Princess Zara Sith, daughter of Emperor Vel Thorin. I have been assigned to be your guide during your visit to our empire." Ambassador Lisa stepped forward and bowed slightly. A gesture the humans had learned was polite in Velthrian culture. "Your Highness, we are honored. I am Ambassador Lisa Chen, representing Earth and humanity." The princess returned the bow, then her eyes swept over the human delegation. When her gaze reached Jake, standing at the back in his slightly too big suit, she paused for just a moment. Jake felt his face grow warm. The introductions continued. There was Captain Ben Hughes, military advisor, Dr. Amy Patterson, xenobiologist, engineer Chris Walker. And finally, Jake was introduced. Jake Morrison, wildlife biologist specializing in predator behavior, Lisa said. Princess Zara Sith's expression didn't change much, but Jake thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Amusement? Maybe? Or curiosity? "A predator specialist," the princess said. "How interesting. We have much to discuss, I think." Over the next 2 days, the princess gave them a tour of Kethros Station and the jungle moon it orbited, also called Kethros Prime. She was professional and informative, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding back. She answered their questions, but there was something in her tone. Not quite condescending, but close. It was most obvious when she spoke to Jake. Whenever he asked about the local wildlife or ecosystem management, she would answer, but always in a way that felt like she was explaining simple concepts to a child. She never said anything directly rude, but the message was clear. She thought humans were newcomers who didn't really understand these things yet. On the third day, the princess made an announcement over dinner. The humans sat with a group of Velthrian officials in a beautiful dining hall that overlooked the jungle moon below. "I would like to invite you to join me on a safari expedition," Princess Zarasith said. "Kethros Prime is home to some of the most magnificent and dangerous predators in our empire. We have learned to coexist with them through careful management and advanced technology. I think it would be educational for you to see our methods." The other humans looked excited. Captain Ben Hughes immediately started asking about the security arrangements. Dr. Patterson wanted to know about the ecosystem. Engineer Walker was curious about the technology they used. Jake stayed quiet, but his mind was racing. He had been reading everything he could find about Kethros Prime's wildlife. The creatures here were unlike anything on Earth. Larger, faster, more aggressive. But there was something else too. Something he had noticed in the reports. Patterns in their behavior that seemed familiar. "What do you think, Mr. Morrison?" the princess asked suddenly, drawing everyone's attention to him. "You are our predator expert. Does this interest you?" Jake met her eyes. In them, he saw the challenge. She was testing him, he realized. Maybe testing all of them, seeing if humans were as tough as they claimed, or just another soft species that needed technology to survive. "I'd be honored, Your Highness," Jake said quietly. "I'm very interested to see how Velthrian methods compare to Earth's approaches." Something flickered across the princess's face again. This time, Jake was sure it was amusement. "Excellent," she said. "We leave tomorrow at dawn. I promise you, it will be an experience you will never forget." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the princess's words, about the way she looked at him, at all of them. She was kind, but she clearly thought humans were weak, inexperienced, just another species that would need the Velthrians to show them how things were done. Jake looked out his window at the jungle moon below. Somewhere down there were creatures that the Velthrians considered the deadliest predators in their empire, creatures that had killed trained hunters and soldiers. But Jake came from Earth, and Earth had its own predators. He wondered what the princess would think if she knew that humans had evolved alongside creatures just as dangerous, that his ancestors had survived by learning to think like predators, to understand them, to become better at hunting than anything else on their planet. He wondered if she would still look at him the same way when this was over. Tomorrow would be interesting. The shuttle dropped through the clouds toward the jungle below. Jake sat near the window, watching the landscape change from scattered trees to thick, endless green. Kethros Prime's jungle was darker than Earth's rainforests. The plants were deep blue-green, almost black in places, and they grew so thick that he couldn't see the ground. Princess Zarasith sat across from him, checking a holographic display that floated above her wrist. She wore different clothes now, practical armor that looked lightweight but strong. Her long hair was tied back, and she carried a sleek energy rifle. "The Shadow Maw is the apex predator of Kethros Prime," she explained to the group. "They grow up to 15 feet long, weigh nearly a ton, and hunt in packs of 5 to 12. They have 6 legs, which gives them incredible speed and stability on any terrain. Their skin can change color to match their surroundings, making them nearly invisible until they attack." Captain Ben Hughes whistled low. "And you hunt these things for sport?" The princess smiled. "We hunt them to maintain balance in the ecosystem. They're intelligent, adaptable, and they breed quickly. Without management, they would overrun the planet and kill everything else." Jake made notes on his tablet, but he was also watching the jungle below. He could see movement in the canopy, large shapes moving between the trees. The wildlife here was active even in the middle of the day. The shuttle landed in a clearing that had been cut from the jungle. A base camp was already set up, with several structures that looked temporary but high-tech. Velthrian guards stood watch at the perimeter, their weapons ready. More guards were setting up sensor arrays that would alert them to any approaching predators. "We'll spend tonight at camp," Princess Zarasith said as they stepped out of the shuttle. Tomorrow morning, we begin the hunt. The sensors have already detected 3 Shadow Maw packs in this region. We'll track the closest one and engage them, Dr. Patterson immediately started examining the nearby plants with her scanner. Engineer Walker was fascinated by the sensor arrays. Captain Hughes conferred with the Velthrian security chief about defensive positions. Jake walked to the edge of the clearing and looked into the jungle. It was loud here. Much louder than Earth's forests. Strange calls and roars echoed through the trees. Something screamed in the distance, high and sharp, then went suddenly silent. Impressive, isn't it? Princess Zarasith had walked up beside him. This jungle is alive in a way few places in the galaxy can match. It reminds me of home, Jake said quietly. The princess looked at him with surprise. Earth has jungles like this? Similar. Different creatures, but the same feeling. Everything is eating everything else. Every sound means something. Every silence means something too. She seemed to consider this. I have read about Earth's wildlife. Your planet has predators, yes, but nothing like the Shadow Maw. Nothing that requires this level of technology to hunt safely. Jake didn't argue. He had learned that sometimes it was better to let people believe what they wanted. Words rarely convinced anyone. Only evidence did. As the sun began to set, the jungle grew even louder. The Velthrian guards activated shield generators that created a shimmering barrier around the camp. Energy weapons were charged and ready. The sensor arrays beeped and pinged constantly as they tracked movement in the surrounding jungle. Those sensors pick up everything, don't they? Jake asked one of the guards. Everything larger than a small rodent within 2 kilometers. The guard replied proudly. We'll know if a Shadow Maw pack comes within 1,000 meters. Jake nodded but said nothing. He was watching the jungle beyond the shields, looking at the patterns of movement, listening to the sounds. Dinner was served in the main tent. The food was good, synthesized but flavored to match each species' preferences. The Velthrians talked about previous hunts, sharing stories of successful tracking and dangerous encounters. They were clearly experienced and skilled. Princess Zarasith told a story about tracking a Shadow Maw alpha for 3 days before finally cornering it in a canyon. The battle had been fierce, but her team had won. The key is technology, she explained. Energy shields to protect us. Sensors to track them. Weapons powerful enough to penetrate their hide. Without these advantages, hunting a Shadow Maw would be suicide. How did your people hunt them before you had this technology? Jake asked. The princess paused. We didn't. Our ancestors avoided the Shadow Maw territories entirely. It wasn't until we developed modern weapons that we could expand into these regions. Jake found that interesting. On Earth, humans had hunted the megafauna long before they had anything more advanced than sharpened sticks and stones. They had taken down mammoths, cave bears, giant cats, not with superior weapons, but with superior planning, patience, and understanding of how predators thought. As the evening wore on, Jake volunteered to help with the watch. The princess smiled at that. The same slightly amused smile. That's kind of you, Mr. Morrison. But unnecessary. Our automated systems are more reliable than any living guard. They never get tired, never lose focus. You should rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. Jake accepted this and went to his assigned tent, but he didn't sleep. He lay on his cot, listening to the jungle. The sensor arrays beeped regularly. The shield generators hummed, but underneath all that technology, Jake could hear the real jungle. The authentic sounds of predators and prey, of territory and survival. Around midnight, he heard something that made him sit up. It was a pattern in the calls, a rhythm that shouldn't be there. He went to the tent entrance and looked out. The camp was quiet. Guards stood at their posts, but they looked relaxed, confident in their technology. The sensor arrays showed all clear. But Jake knew that sound. He had heard similar patterns from wolf packs in Wyoming, from coyotes in New Mexico. It was communication, coordination. Something was moving out there in the jungle, multiple somethings, and they were talking to each other. He walked over to where Princess Zarasith was reviewing data with her security chief. Your Highness, Jake said quietly. I think we're being watched. She looked up from her display. The sensors show nothing within 1,000 meters, Mr. Morrison. We're quite safe. I know, but the sounds, the calls in the jungle, there's a pattern. Something's coordinating out there. The security chief checked his displays and shook his head. All clear. The Shadow Maw are not that intelligent. They hunt by instinct, not planning. Princess Zarasith looked at Jake more carefully. You think you can hear something our sensors cannot detect? I think the sensors are looking for movement and body heat. But predators don't always need to move to hunt. Sometimes they just watch. They learn. They wait. The princess considered this for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was a kind smile, not a mocking one. You care deeply about your work. I respect that. But our technology has never failed us. If there was a Shadow Maw pack nearby, we would know. Try to rest, Mr. Morrison. We have a long day ahead tomorrow. Jake nodded and returned to his tent. But he didn't sleep. He lay there, listening. And the more he listened, the more certain he became. Something was out there. Multiple packs, judging by the sounds. And they weren't just passing by. They were staying close, circling, learning about the camp and the creatures inside it. The Velthrians relied on their technology. It was advanced, powerful, impressive. But technology had limitations. It could only detect what it was programmed to look for, and sometimes, the most dangerous predators were the ones who learned to avoid detection. Jake had spent years studying how predators hunted, how they used terrain, patience, and adaptation to overcome prey that should have been stronger or faster. The best predators didn't rely on strength alone, they relied on intelligence. As dawn approached and the camp began to stir, Jake wondered what the day would bring. The princess was confident, and maybe she had every right to be. Her people had hunted Shadow Maw successfully for generations, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. The jungle felt wrong. Too quiet in some places, too loud in others. The patterns were off. He just hoped he was being paranoid. But in his experience, when dealing with apex predators, paranoia was usually the thing that kept you alive. The hunting party moved through the jungle in formation. Princess Zarasith led the way with her security chief. Behind them came the Velthrian guards, weapons ready. The humans walked in the middle, protected on all sides. More guards followed at the rear. They had been tracking the Shadow Maw pack for 3 hours. The sensors showed the creatures moving steadily northeast, about 2 kilometers ahead. The princess seemed pleased with their progress. Jake walked quietly, but his eyes never stopped moving. He watched the trees, the undergrowth, the patterns of light and shadow. He noticed things. Claw marks on trees that looked fresh, disturbed soil where something large had passed recently, and most importantly, areas where the smaller animals had gone completely silent. Your Highness, Jake said, moving forward to walk beside the princess. I think there might be more packs nearby than the sensors are showing. She glanced at him with that familiar patient smile. The sensors are tracking 1 pack ahead of us. Mr. Morrison. What makes you think there are more? These marks on the trees. They're territorial markers, and they're recent. But they're in different directions, made by different packs. And the birds, they've stopped calling in a pattern that circles us, not just in front of us. The security chief checked his scanner. I show only 1 pack, 2.3 kilometers ahead. These markers could be days old. The sap is still wet, Jake pointed out. And look at the way the grass is bent here and over there. Large animals pass through, moving parallel to us, not away from us. Princess Zarasith stopped and looked at the areas Jake indicated. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt. Maybe. But then she shook her head. Even if there are other packs nearby, we're well protected. Our shields can hold against multiple Shadow Maw attacks, and we have enough firepower to handle anything these creatures can throw at us. Your caution is noted, But perhaps humans are not used to hunting creatures this dangerous. Jake said nothing more. He had warned them. That was all he could do. They continued deeper into the jungle. The sun was high now, but little light reached the forest floor. The canopy was too thick. Everything was shadows and dark blue-green foliage. The air was hot and heavy, hard to breathe. Around noon, they stopped for a brief rest. The guards set up a portable shield generator, creating a small, protected area. Everyone drank water and checked their equipment. Jake stood at the edge of the shield, looking out into the jungle. Captain Ben Hughes came over to stand beside him. "You really think we're surrounded?" the captain asked quietly. "I know we are," Jake replied. "I count at least 3 packs. Maybe 4. They're coordinating, taking turns, making noise to mask each other's movements. It's sophisticated. Should I be worried?" Jake looked at the Velthrian guards, at their advanced weapons and armor, at the confidence in their movements. Maybe. These aliens are good at what they do, but they're relying entirely on their technology. If something goes wrong with that technology, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They resumed the hunt. According to the sensors, they were closing in on the pack they'd been tracking. 1/2 kilometer now. The princess ordered everyone to be quiet and move carefully. That's when Jake noticed the sky darkening. Storm clouds were rolling in fast, faster than seemed natural. Lightning flickered in the distance. "We should turn back," Jake said. "Storms in jungles this dense are dangerous." "We're almost at the pack's location," the princess replied. "We'll make the kill, and then return to camp before the storm hits." But the storm moved faster than expected. Within minutes, rain began falling. Hard and cold. Lightning struck nearby. Close enough that Jake felt the hair on his arms stand up. Thunder boomed so loud it shook the ground. The sensor arrays started flickering. The security chief frowned at his displays. "Electromagnetic interference," he said. "The storm is affecting our equipment." "How much?" Princess Zarasith asked, her voice still calm but with an edge now. "Sensors are down to 50% accuracy. Shield generators are still functional, but..." He never finished the sentence. The first shadow maw burst from the undergrowth so fast that Jake barely saw it move. It was massive. All 6 legs pumping. Skin shifting colors to match the jungle. It hit the shield barrier, and the whole system sparked and flickered. Then 2 more attacked from different directions. The shields held, but barely. Warning lights flashed on the generators. "They're testing our defenses," Captain Hughes said. More shadow maw appeared. Not just the pack they'd been tracking. Multiple packs. Attacking from all sides at once. They had been herded here, Jake realized. Led into a killing zone. The Velthrian guards opened fire. Energy bolts lighting up the rain-soaked jungle. They hit several shadow maw. But the creatures were fast, and their camouflage made them hard to target in the storm. And there were so many of them. One of the shield generators exploded, overloaded. A section of the barrier went down. Shadow maw poured through the gap. The guards tried to form a defensive line, but the creatures were everywhere, moving with terrifying speed and coordination. Princess Zarasith fought bravely, her rifle firing in precise bursts. But she got separated from her guards, pushed back toward a cluster of dark trees. 3 shadow maw cornered her, moving in a coordinated pattern that cut off all her escape routes. Jake moved without thinking. While everyone else was panicking, trying to regroup, he ran toward the princess. His movements were different from the Velthrians. Not slower, but more deliberate. He read the terrain, used cover, anticipated where the shadow maw would be, rather than where they were. He reached the princess just as the largest shadow maw, an alpha male, prepared to attack. Jake put himself between them, standing in a way that made the creature pause. "Stay behind me," Jake said quietly. "Don't move. Don't speak." The alpha shadow maw was enormous up close. Its eyes were intelligent, calculating. It studied Jake, head tilting slightly. Its lips pulled back, showing teeth as long as Jake's hand. Jake didn't raise his weapon. He didn't flinch. He stood still, feet planted, body language open but firm. His eyes met the creature's eyes and didn't look away. Around them, the battle raged. Energy bolts flashed. Shadow Maw roared. Guards shouted orders, but in that small space, there was only Jake and the Alpha, locked in a silent communication that transcended species. The Alpha took a step forward. Jake didn't move back. He didn't show fear or aggression. He simply stood his ground, radiating calm certainty. This was his space. He belonged here, and the Shadow Maw would pay a heavy price if it tried to take it from him. The creature's nostrils flared. It was smelling him, reading the chemical signals in his sweat, in his breath, reading the pheromones that all predators produce, and whatever it smelled, it didn't like. This small creature standing before it didn't smell like prey. It didn't smell like the tall blue aliens who needed their shields and weapons. It smelled wrong, dangerous, like something the Alpha's instincts told it to avoid. The Alpha backed up a step. Then another. Its ears flattened against its head. A sign of uncertainty. Jake took a slow breath and straightened slightly, making himself look bigger, not threatening, just present, solid, unafraid. The Alpha made a low sound in its throat. Not quite a growl. It was a question. A test. Jake answered by not moving. By maintaining his calm presence. Around them, the other Shadow Maw were noticing. They had stopped attacking and were watching their Alpha, waiting for the signal to continue the assault. The Alpha looked at Jake one more time, measuring him. Then it made a sharp barking sound and turned away. It loped back into the jungle, and its pack followed. Within seconds, they had vanished into the storm-dark trees. The other packs, seeing the Alpha retreat, also pulled back. The whole attack ended as suddenly as it had begun. One moment, there were Shadow Maw everywhere. The next they were gone. Silence fell, broken only by the rain and distant thunder. The Velthrian guards stood frozen, weapons still raised, unable to understand what had just happened. Princess Zarasith stared at Jake, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "What? How did you—" Jake lowered his weapon and turned to face her. He was breathing hard now, the adrenaline catching up with him. But his voice was steady. "We should head back to camp. The storm's getting worse." The security chief checked his sensors, but they were almost completely offline now. The Shadow Maw packs. They're all withdrawing. All of them. I've never seen them retreat without a prolonged fight, the princess finished. She was still staring at Jake. In all our records, in all our history of hunting Shadow Maw, they have never retreated like that. Never. Jake started walking back toward camp, following his internal sense of direction since the equipment was unreliable. They're smart creatures. They know when a fight isn't worth it. But we had superior weapons, superior numbers of guards. What made them? She stopped, understanding dawning in her eyes. They weren't afraid of our technology. They were afraid of you. Jake didn't answer. He just kept walking through the rain, leading them home. They made it back to camp as the storm finally broke. The shuttle returned to the station that evening, and by the time they reached the palace, word had already spread about what happened in the jungle. Princess Zarasith requested a private meeting with the human delegation the next morning. They gathered in a quiet conference room overlooking the jungle moon. The princess was there with her security chief and several scientific advisors. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept. "Mr. Morrison," she began, her tone completely different from the polite condescension of before. "I need to understand what happened yesterday. My advisors have reviewed the sensor footage. What little remained operational during the storm. They cannot explain the Shadow Maw behavior. Neither can I." Jake sat quietly for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Ambassador Lisa nodded to him encouragingly. "What do you want to know?" Jake asked. "Everything. How did you know they were surrounding us? How did you move through them without being attacked? And most importantly, how did you make the Alpha retreat without firing a weapon?" Jake glanced at his fellow humans, then back at the princess. "I recognized the patterns. The way they moved, communicated, coordinated their attack. It's the same way pack predators hunt on Earth, but Earth doesn't have creatures like the shadow maw, one of the scientific advisors said. We've reviewed your planet's wildlife database. Nothing comes close to their size, speed, or lethality. That's true. Jake agreed. But size and speed aren't everything. What matters is how you think, how you adapt, how you survive. Princess Zarasith leaned forward. Explain. Jake took a breath. Earth is what galactic surveys call a Category 9 hazard world. Do you know what that means? The room went quiet. The security chief checked his database, and his eyes widened. Category 9 is the highest danger classification. It means a planet is barely habitable, with extreme environmental hazards and aggressive megafauna. Exactly, Jake said. Earth has more apex predators per square kilometer than any other inhabited world in the known galaxy. My ancestors didn't evolve on a safe world where they could develop technology first and then conquer nature. They evolved in a world that was actively trying to kill them every single day. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at the jungle. Humans evolved as prey animals at first. We weren't the biggest or strongest or fastest. We were weak, slow, had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. By all rights, we should have gone extinct. But you didn't, the princess said softly. No, because we learned, we adapted, we became persistence hunters. We couldn't outrun a deer, but we could follow it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We couldn't overpower a mammoth, but we could coordinate as a pack to drive it off a cliff. We studied every predator on our planet, learned their patterns, their behaviors, their weaknesses. Dr. Amy Patterson added, humans developed large brains not to build technology, but to survive. We needed to think better than everything trying to eat us. We needed to outsmart predators that were faster, stronger, and better armed than we were. Captain Ben Hughes continued. And over millions of years, we didn't just survive alongside apex predators. We became apex predators. Not because we were the strongest, but because we were the smartest, most adaptable, and most persistent hunters evolution had ever created. The Velthrian advisors were looking at their databases now, cross-referencing information about Earth. One of them spoke up, voice shaky. Your planet has had creatures called lions, bears, tigers, wolves, crocodiles, sharks. All apex predators in their environments. And humans coexisted with all of them? Coexisted, hunted, and in some cases, domesticated, Jake said. Wolves became dogs. We took apex predators and turned them into our companions. Princess Zarasith looked like she was struggling to process this information. But you seem so civilized, so peaceful. Ambassador Lisa spoke up now. We are civilized. We are peaceful. But that doesn't mean we've forgotten what we are underneath. Evolution doesn't disappear in a few thousand years. Every human still carries the instincts of a persistence hunter. We still read body language, track patterns, assess threats the way our ancestors did. When Jake stood before that Shadow Maw Alpha, the security chief said slowly, working it out. He wasn't using technology. He was using... what? Instinct? Not just instinct, Jake corrected. Understanding. I knew what that creature was seeing when it looked at me. I controlled my fear response, my body language, my scent markers. I showed it that I was a predator too, and that attacking me would be costly. Shadow Maw can smell fear, one of the scientific advisors said. They use it to identify prey. So do wolves, so do bears. I've studied them my whole life. I know how to stand, so they see me as a threat, not a meal. The chemicals our bodies produce when we're calm versus when we're afraid are different. Predators evolved to detect that difference. But humans also evolved to control it. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Princess Zarasith asked the question that everyone was thinking. If humans are this formidable from an evolutionary standpoint, what happens when you combine those instincts with advanced technology? Ambassador Lisa met her gaze steadily. That's what the galaxy is about to find out. Humans have only had faster-than-light travel for 15 years. We're still learning, still developing, but we bring something unique to the galactic community. What's that? The princess asked. Experience with true danger. Most species in the galaxy evolved on safer worlds. They developed technology to overcome environmental challenges. But humans, we evolved in constant danger. We learned to face fear, to understand it, to work with it, rather than hide behind shields. So, things are calm. CUS, Captain Hughes added. Your Shadow Maw are terrifying creatures. But my ancestors faced similar terror with nothing but sharp rocks and wooden spears. And they won, not by being stronger, but by being smarter. Princess Zarasith stood and walked to the window, standing beside Jake. Together they looked down at the jungle. We thought humans were weak, she said quietly. Newcomers who needed to be guided and protected. But you're not, are you? We're different, Jake replied. Not better. Not worse. Just different. Your people learned to thrive by developing technology to conquer nature. My people learned to thrive by understanding nature so well that we became part of it. The princess was quiet for a long time. Then she turned to her advisors. Leave us. I need to speak with the human delegation privately. Once the Velthrians had left, the princess sat down again. Her formal demeanor had softened. I owe you an apology, Mr. Morrison. All of you. I underestimated humans based on your brief time in space. I assumed that because you were new to the galaxy, you were inexperienced in all ways. That was foolish of me. No offense taken, Your Highness, Jake said. Most species in the galaxy probably think the same way. We look fragile compared to many of you. We don't have natural armor or weapons. We seem dependent on technology, but you're not. We like technology. It makes life easier, but we don't need it to survive. Not the way some species do. Strip away everything, put a human in a hostile environment with nothing but the clothes on their back, and they'll probably find a way to survive, because that's what we've always done. Princess Zarasith smiled. But it was a different smile than before. This one had respect in it. My father will want to meet with you. The Emperor needs to understand what humanity truly is. What will you tell him? Ambassador Lisa asked. The princess thought about that. I'll tell him that we've been looking at humans the wrong way. We saw newcomers to the galactic stage and assumed they had nothing to teach us. But you have millions of years of experience we lack. You understand things we've forgotten, or never knew. She looked at Jake specifically. I'll tell him that the galaxy should welcome humans not as children to be guided, but as equals with unique strengths. And perhaps, as allies who can help us with challenges we haven't been able to solve. What kind of challenges? Captain Hughes asked. We have dozens of worlds that resist colonization. Planets with hostile wildlife that our technology struggles to overcome. Frontier regions where predators have adapted to avoid our sensors and weapons. We've always approached these problems with better technology, but maybe what we need is better understanding. Jake felt a weight settle on him, a responsibility. You want humans to help manage these worlds? I want to learn from humans. We all should. Princess Zarasith stood. Tomorrow, you'll meet with my father and the Imperial Council. They need to hear this. All of it. As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to leave, the princess touched Jake's arm gently. Thank you, she said simply. You saved my life yesterday. But more than that, you opened my eyes. I won't forget that, Jake nodded. I hope this leads to good things for both our peoples. So do I, she replied. So do I. The Imperial throne room was massive, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of Velthrian nobles and officials lined the walls, all dressed in formal robes. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Emperor Veltheron himself. The Emperor was older than his daughter, but still powerful in bearing. His robes were silver and black, and he wore a crown that seemed to be made of liquid metal, constantly shifting and flowing. Jake walked with the other humans down the long carpet toward the throne. He had never felt so nervous in his life. This was the leader of an empire that controlled hundreds of worlds. One wrong word could have serious consequences for Earth, but Ambassador Lisa walked with confidence, and Jake tried to match her calm demeanor. "Ambassador Chen," the Emperor said, his voice deep and resonant. "My daughter has told me a remarkable story about your people, about what happened in our jungle. I confess, I find it difficult to believe. After one I mark, with respect, Your Imperial Majesty," Lisa replied, bowing. "Everything in the report is true. Jake Morrison did indeed face a Shadow Maw Alpha, without weapons, and made it retreat through presence alone. I have reviewed the sensor footage," the Emperor said. "What little remained functional. I have consulted with our best xenobiologists and predator specialists. None of them can explain it. So, I ask you directly, Mr. Morrison, how did you do it?" Jake stepped forward. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "I used the same methods humans have used for millions of years. Your Majesty, I read the predator's body language, controlled my own fear responses, and presented myself as a threat rather than prey. And you learned this. How? By studying predators on Earth, by understanding that beneath all the differences between species, certain things remain constant. Confidence, territory, the cost-benefit calculation every predator makes before attacking." The Emperor leaned forward. "Princess Zarasith tells me that Earth is a Category 9 hazard world, that humans evolved alongside apex predators more dangerous than most species in the galaxy can imagine. Is this true?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then why do humans seem so fragile? You have no natural armor, no claws or fangs, no enhanced strength or speed compared to most galactic species." Jake felt Captain Hughes tense beside him, but he kept his voice steady. "Because we didn't need them. We developed something more effective. We developed intelligence that could adapt faster than any physical evolution. We learned to use tools, to coordinate as groups, to think ahead. We became persistence hunters, chasing prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We became ambush predators, planning our attacks days in advance. We became every kind of hunter that evolution could create, all in one species." The throne room was absolutely silent now. Every Velthrian was listening intently. "We look fragile," Jake continued, "because we don't rely on our bodies alone. We rely on our minds. Strip away our technology, put us in any environment, and humans will find a way to survive, because that's what we've always done. That's what we're built for." One of the Emperor's advisors spoke up. "But surely this is exaggeration? Earth cannot be that dangerous." Dr. Patterson stepped forward. "May I show something, Your Majesty?" The Emperor nodded. Amy activated a holographic display that showed images of Earth's wildlife. "This is a grizzly bear," she said. "It weighs up to 800 kilograms, can run at 50 kilometers per hour, and has claws 10 centimeters long. Humans hunted them with primitive weapons." The image changed. "This is a saltwater crocodile. 7 meters long, bite force of 16,000 newtons. Humans lived alongside them in the same rivers." Another image. "Great white shark. 6 meters, 300 teeth. Humans swam in oceans knowing these existed." The images kept coming. Lions, tigers, wolves, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, parasites, diseases, each one a potential killer. And this doesn't include the ice ages, the droughts, the volcanic eruptions, the hurricanes, the earthquakes," Amy continued. "Earth threw everything at humanity, and humanity survived. Not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable." The Emperor sat back, his expression thoughtful. The advisors were murmuring among themselves, checking databases, confirming the information. Finally, the Emperor spoke. "I begin to understand. You are not a warrior species, but you are a survivor species. Perhaps the most successful survivor species the galaxy has ever seen. We prefer to think of ourselves as a cooperative species, Ambassador Lisa said. We survived by working together, by sharing knowledge, by helping each other. That's what we want to bring to the galactic community. Not conquest, but cooperation. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, which made everyone in the room straighten in attention. I have made a decision, he announced. The Velthrian Empire will formally propose a mutual defense and cooperation treaty with Earth. We have much to learn from each other. Relief washed over Jake. Around them, the Velthrian nobles began to murmur, but they sounded positive, interested rather than hostile. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, I am creating a new position, Apex Predator Specialist, to the Imperial Court. This individual will advise us on matters of dangerous wildlife, ecosystem management, and predator behavior. Mr. Morrison, if your government agrees, I would like you to fill this position. Jake's mind went blank for a second. Your Majesty, I'm honored. But I'm just a biologist. I'm not a diplomat, or, you are exactly what we need, the Emperor interrupted gently. You understand something we have forgotten. How to coexist with danger rather than simply overwhelming it with technology. We have dozens of worlds that resist colonization because of hostile fauna. Traditional methods have failed. We need new approaches. Human approaches. Princess Zarasith stepped forward from where she had been standing near the throne. I would like to request permission to work with Mr. Morrison on these projects, Father. I believe I have much to learn. The Emperor smiled at his daughter. Granted. You will be the liaison between the Velthrian military and the new Apex Predator program. Ambassador Lisa looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. It was his choice. Jake thought about his comfortable life on Earth, his research projects, his simple routine. Then he thought about the challenges ahead. The chance to see dozens of new worlds. To study alien predators no human had ever encountered. To build bridges between species. I accept, Jake said. If Earth approves, I'll do my best to serve both our peoples. The Emperor nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. We will begin immediately. There is a world in the Korvax sector. A jungle planet called Vexthar. Previous settlement attempts have failed due to a predator species we call razorwings. They are flying hunters that attack in massive swarms. Perhaps you and Princess Zarasith can find a solution where others have failed. Over the next few weeks, Jake worked with Velthrian scientists and military advisors to prepare for the Vexthar expedition. Princess Zarasith was there every day, asking questions, learning, challenging her own assumptions about predators and nature. They had become friends, Jake realized. Real friends, built on mutual respect, rather than the polite condescension of their first meeting. I keep thinking about what you said, the princess told him one evening as they reviewed data about razorwings, about humans being persistence hunters. Never giving up, always adapting. It's terrifying in a way. Why terrifying? Jake asked. Because it means that if humans ever became hostile, they would be nearly impossible to stop. You don't need to win every battle. You just need to keep coming back, learning from each loss, adapting, trying again. Eventually, you would win. Jake understood her concern. That's why it's so important that humans and the rest of the galaxy build strong friendships now. We don't want to be enemies with anyone. We've seen what happens when predators fight each other. Everyone gets hurt, even the winner. Your people chose cooperation, she said. When you achieved space travel, you could have tried to conquer. Many species did. We've spent millions of years fighting each other on Earth. We learned that lesson the hard way. War is expensive. Cooperation is profitable. Peace is better than victory. The princess smiled. I think I'm beginning to understand why the Shadow Maw retreated. You didn't just show strength. You showed wisdom. The wisdom to avoid unnecessary conflict. 2 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of a Velthrian exploration ship, approaching Vexthar. The planet was beautiful from orbit, covered in violet and orange vegetation. Princess Zarasith stood beside him, wearing practical field armor instead of formal robes. "Ready?" she asked. Jake checked his equipment one last time. No energy shields this time. No heavy weapons. Just observation tools, recording devices, and his own knowledge. "Ready," he confirmed. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Jake thought about how far he had come. A few months ago, he was just a wildlife biologist who studied wolves and bears. Now he was humanity's representative to an alien empire, helping to forge alliances and solve problems that had stumped civilizations thousands of years more advanced than his own. But he was still the same person. Still someone who respected nature, who understood predators, who knew that the most dangerous creatures weren't always the ones with the biggest teeth. The ship landed in a clearing. Through the viewport, Jake could see movement in the alien sky. The razor wings, circling in their hundreds, assessing this new intrusion into their territory. Princess Zarasith looked at him with complete trust. "Show us how humans do this," Jake smiled. "First, we observe. We learn. We understand. Then we find a way to coexist. Because that's what we do best." They stepped out of the ship together, human and alien, ready to face whatever challenges this new world would bring. Behind them, Earth was just a small blue dot in the distant stars. But that small planet had produced something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that survived not by avoiding danger, but by understanding it. And the galaxy would never look at humans quite the same way again. They weren't just newcomers anymore. They weren't weak or naive. They were humans. And humans were survivors. The best survivors evolution had ever created. As Jake walked toward the circling razor wings with Princess Zarasith at his side, he felt the weight of that responsibility. But he also felt ready. Because this was what he was meant to do. Not conquer nature, but understand it. Not overwhelm with technology, but adapt with intelligence. The alien predators above them called out in their strange language. Jake listened, reading the patterns, beginning to understand. This would work. It had to work. Because humans didn't give up. They never gave up. That was their greatest strength, and perhaps their greatest gift to the galaxy. The story of humans among the stars was just beginning. And it would be a story not of conquest, but of cooperation. Not of domination, but of understanding. The apex predators had backed down from the human. Now the galaxy would learn why.